Howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. This is going to be part 2 of the gun conversation. If you didn't watch that first video, go back and watch it. I know it's boring, but you need that information to understand what we're going to talk about in this one, and that is gun control and why a lot of gun control has been an abject failure. The main reason is that it was written by people that don't know anything about firearms. So we're going to talk about gun control that has been tried, gun control that is recommended, and then we'll talk about some that might actually work. Because a lot of the stuff that is like keynotes, like these are the things they really want, it's not going to work. And it's not going to work, and we can demonstrate why. But we're also going to come up with some solutions that might. Okay. Got my toy AR-15 again. If you're not going to go back and watch that first video, as is highly recommended, this is a toy, but it works exactly like the AR-15. It's very functional. It's a functional representation. Okay, so what are the big gun control ideas? First one is to ban assault weapons. Okay, tell me what one is. And that's not a smart answer. I'm not being a smart aleck when I say that. The reason the first assault weapons ban was an utter failure is because there's nothing called an assault weapon. It's a made-up term, and it's not a semantic argument, which is, that's how it comes across in internet debates. When I see people talking about it, they think that it doesn't matter, but it does. Now, as we learned in the last one, this is a semi-automatic rifle. This, the receiver, is what matters. The assault weapons ban didn't talk about this really. The assault weapons ban set out criteria, and the reason they had to was because the assault weapons ban would be kind of like if Congress passed a law banning Zoomy cars, and the automotive industry was like, what is that? Because there's no word, assault weapon is not in the firearms vocabulary. Okay, so when they set out that criteria, and I'm going to give you actual criteria, okay, that they use to classify something as an assault weapon. If it has a collapsible stock, okay, that was one reason. Now the reason they have them is because soldiers are different heights, therefore the length it needs to be from the body is different, so you can get a good cheek weld. That's one. It doesn't have anything to do with lethality of the weapon. Nothing. Doesn't have anything to do with how it works. Nothing. Let's see, if it had a pistol grip was one. So if it was like this part was the exact same, the receiver was the exact same caliber, same rate of fire, everything, but you held it like this instead of like this, it wasn't an assault weapon. Again, doesn't make sense. A bayonet lug, okay, thing you use to put a knife on the end of your gun, because you know there's a lot of criminals walking around stabbing folk when they're holding a rifle. With stuff like that, nothing that actually mattered. That's why it was a failure. That is why it was a failure. Okay, so now that we understand how a lack of knowledge can truly damage gun control, let's talk about the current theories, the ones that people want. Ban high-capacity magazines. Okay, 30 rounds, first off, 30-round magazine looks like this. That's standard. That's not actually high capacity, but let's say that it is, okay? The idea is to cut it down, make it only 10 rounds. Because then the idea is that in a mass shooting, when the bad guy goes in, bang, 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 he can only get off 10 shots before he has to change magazines, and then the good guys can rush him while he's changing magazines. Okay. When I hit this button, I want you to start counting. Stop counting when I pull the trigger. Okay? That's it. That's how long it takes to change a magazine. You can't rush somebody in that time. And when the guy's changing magazines, that's a good time to get further away, not closer to him. That is horrible advice. That's going to get some kids killed. Okay? That is not the time to do it. And if, you know, a lot of guys actually they've taped them, so they just switch them. It's even faster. Not a good idea. More importantly, the magazine, It's a box. It's a metal box with a spring in it. 2 metal plates, one on each end. One goes up and down, the other one stays put. You can make them out of stuff from Home Depot. It's not hard. I mean, I'm actually horrible at it, but I know a lot of guys that do it all the time. There's not much to it. It's not a piece that you're really going to be able to regulate, because there's nothing identifiable in it. It's a spring and a couple of pieces of sheet metal. It's going to be real hard to regulate. So you're wasting a lot of energy, a lot of resources trying to track something down that can be made. And more importantly, it doesn't do any good. The idea behind it is one of somebody that doesn't understand how quickly you can change your magazines. So that one doesn't work. Really doesn't. Well, what about just banning the AR-15? Right? Just get rid of it by name. Get rid of this thing, because it's the one that's used. Oh, please don't do that. Seriously. Remember, the reason this is used is because it's the most popular rifle in the United States. It's popular. That's why the kids have access to it, because it's in their parents' home. Okay? If you were to get rid of this, the next most popular rifles are probably going to be a Garand or an M14. And anybody who knows anything about firearms just got a lump in their throat thinking about a Garand in a school. Because a Garand, remember we talked about it in the first video, this is low intermediate power. A Garand is not. It is high power. It is a 30-06. And in English, what that means is there's no hiding behind a locker. There's no hiding behind a door. Not really any hiding behind a cinder block. And if some kid sends a 30-06 round screaming down a crowded hallway, it's going to kill 2 or 3 people, 1 bullet. So please don't, because the day a kid walks into a school with a Garand, you're going to be praying for these things to come back. That's not it. What about banning semi-automatic rifles altogether? Okay, well, first, that's every rifle designed pretty much in the last 100 years. That's a big step right there. More importantly, is that it's going to be pretty ineffective. You know, I know people have said, well, they did it in other countries. Oh, they did, and it kind of worked, but not really, and we'll get to that. Other countries didn't have more guns than people. There's enough guns in the United States to arm every man, woman, and child in it. Of course we have a gun problem, but it's not because of the design of the weapons that are out there. These designs have been there for 100 years. The gun problem's relatively new. So, what else? The other thing that people have to understand is, although these look high-tech, they're not. They're not hard to make. And that's the thing, is honestly, for me, if I'm being honest, I can make this in this shop. Maybe a day. I was never good at this. I can't get the timing right. I don't know. Just not a skill I have. So there's that. They're going to be readily available. Now, the easiest way I can explain how these bans are not going to work the way you think in the U.S. is the M16. Remember, we talked about the AR-15 is the civilian version. The M16 is the military version. You know, that's the one that does this instead of that. If you want to buy an M16 in the U.S., it's not banned. Not really. It's effectively banned. It's still legal to buy one, but you got to get special permission from the ATF, and it's going to run $20,000 to $30,000. Now, a semi-automatic you can pick up in Walmart for like $600, the civilian version, but the full auto, $20,000 to $30,000. That's pretty expensive. What if you want to buy one illegally? 2 to 4. 2 to 4, no wait. 2 to 4,000, about a tenth of the price. Guns are not like drugs. When you ban them, they get cheaper, more accessible to the people you don't want to have them. It's the exact opposite. And that's something we really got to consider. The idea behind gun control is to limit death, right? It's to get rid of that problem. If you ban them, and this becomes a punishable offense, just possessing it, it's going to make people more violent when they have one. More importantly, when it comes to making them, it is easier to make this than it is this. So if you're gonna if you're gonna ban them, then the guys that are gonna make them to fill that black market, which is what prohibition does, it creates a market for it. The guys that are gonna make them, if they're both gonna go to prison, if they're gonna go to prison for making either one, which one do you think they're gonna make? Logically, I think it's a horrible idea. Now, you're going to point to the bans in other countries and say, well, it worked. No, they didn't really. They switched the type of murder. You look and all the statistics saying it worked. If you look and pay attention, it says gun deaths or gun murders. Look at the murder rate in these countries. Didn't really change anything. Continued the trend that they were on. And that's pretty much all of them. Well, it stopped mass shootings at least. It did. It stopped mass shootings because the guns are mostly gone. I mean, they're still out there illegally, but they're mostly gone. You know, kids aren't getting their hands on them. Why don't you pull up the figures for arson? A whole lot of people getting killed in arsons now. Just changes the method, changes the means. Doesn't actually end the problem. Okay, so I've shot down a whole bunch of gun control ideas. What are some that'll work? There's got to be something that can be done, right? Especially about school shootings. I mean, this is important. We got to figure something out. There is, and it's actually really simple. I mean, insanely simple. And it got brought up after the Parkland shooting. And incidentally, the Parkland shooter didn't use high-capacity magazines, or what they're calling high-capacity. He used 10-round magazines. But after that shooting, somebody said, well, why don't we raise the age from 18 to 21? Yeah, that's a great idea. That's brilliant, actually. I mean, that's one of those things so simple it's going to work. Here's the thing. As it stands, an 18-year-old kid can walk into a Walmart or a sporting goods store and pick up something like this for about $600. Odds are he's not going to. He's just going to get the one that's already in his dad's cabinet. Okay? But those that do buy them, and that does happen, they can't. They're out of school at 21. They're gone. Yeah, and you say, well, it may turn it into a workplace shooting. Maybe, but hopefully in those 3 years, he's grown up a little bit. Now, the big objections to this, there were 3. Okay? 2 of them aren't real objections. One is, well, you know, so what you're telling me is that a soldier can enlist in the Army, go overseas, fight in a war, come home and not be able to buy a gun. You got your priorities mixed up. Maybe instead of focusing on how to give an 18-year-old a gun when he comes back, we should focus on stopping 18 and 19-year-old kids from getting shipped off to war. I think that would be a much better solution. Now, there's also the complaint that, well, what if I want to go hunting? I'm just a law-abiding gun owner. I just want to go hunting. See, that might work. That argument might work with liberals that don't own guns, have never been around guns, don't know anything about hunting. Might work with them. But you're talking to another redneck now. You and I both know you've been hunting since you were 12. Your parents bought that gun, right? They bought you that, let's see, probably a Ruger 1022. Put it in the cabinet. That's what you started with. And they let you use it, and they kept track of it, right? Same thing. Same principle. It can still happen. It's not going to stop anybody from going hunting. That's stupid. The only good argument I heard against it are those people who move out at 18 and need a gun to protect themselves. Yeah. That's a risk. It is. I'm not going to lie. I don't have an answer for that one. I don't. But this is what we're talking about. Now, here's the other thing. Another one that needs to be addressed is people with domestic violence histories. And right now the pro-gun guys are going, that's already a law. It is. It is a law. If you're convicted of a domestic violence crime, even if it's a misdemeanor, you can't own a gun anymore. Because, and the reason that was made is because domestic violence is a very good indicator of future violence. So it makes sense. Now, the problem with that is that there's a huge loophole. If the DA knocks the charge back to simple battery or anything other than a domestic violence charge, even if it was domestic violence, you don't get registered. Now, the reason that loophole exists is because law enforcement has a lot of domestic violence. And if a cop is convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, he can't own a gun anymore, so he can't be a cop. So they knock it back to some other misdemeanor. My question is, why do we want those types of people as cops? And that's more of a reason to close that loophole, as far as I'm concerned. So those are the two that I think would work. As far as regulating the actual design, stuff like that, it's a lot like outlawing abortion. It's a lot like outlawing abortion. Doesn't matter what your motives are. The reality is that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to change it. When you make something illegal like that, you're just creating a black market. And what that means is that it's going to be the people you don't want that have the most access. And it's always been like that. You know, we've got to address some other issues rather than just laws. Legislation is not the answer here in any way, shape, or form. Even those two that I recommended, they're not going to do much. They aren't. They're going to mitigate, and they're going to help a little, but they're not going to solve the problem. We're going to talk about truly solving the problem in the next video. So, y'all have a good night.